Welcome back to the Public Information Officers Podcast, where we explore the people, strategies, and ideas shaping public information and public affairs. Evan Meyer is the center of that very thing, and he's the creator of MyGovTools, a platform helping government officers improve constituents' engagement, monitoring community issues, and communicate more effectively. As technology is changing and how agencies connect with the public, we're diving into what works, what doesn't, how communicators can use new tools without losing trust. Evan, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have spent a lot of time working inside government buildings before on the technology side. What frustration or moment made you think there has to be a better way of doing it?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few times that it's happened, and I guess finally it hit me that there's an opportunity. But, my whole career has really been in trying to build things for people that improve the way things are handled. I mean, through software, right? And I like to see efficiencies in how things are done. With Ride Amigos, I've gone through the RFP process so many times. It was my first baby, and in the transportation space. And I realized that was broken. I'm like, oh my God, the RFP okay. How many times do I have to, and back even as recently as a handful of years ago, they were just like massive documents being printed and binded, and 10 of them for everyone to read individually at the table and cross it. And you have to do all that upfront work for their, writing process. And by the time you finish the RFP and it goes through the process, the technology's changed anyway half the time, right? So they're already old. By the time they get the they think they know the requirement. That was the beginning.
Okay. I get it.
Okay.
All right. So I get it. What does MyGovTools do? that should have been the very first question I asked, because we're talking about something you developed here.
Sure. So MyGovTools was built to originally streamline the work that was done at the district office. I was a district director at the state Senate for a while. And I had the opportunity of seeing how many matches are being flicked every morning, and flicking the same match without developing systems and feedback loops that make processes better. And even if you do, by the time a new elected comes in, you start from zero anyway with what the Senate gives you. And it was just like, I can't believe that people are operating this way in 2024, I think. Or 5. So I started building this to streamline those operations and share this with other district directors so that they can have the tools to make their day easier. They wake up, they have everything available for them, real easily streamlined, and being able to understand everything happening in the district, all the information that needs to get sent to the senator or to communications or to the chief or whoever, right? So that kind of information, and how to reflect those resources, your resources that you have, district representatives out in the field. So that was the beginning, and it has evolved over time to become a newsletter right now, really streamline communications for elected officials as our first product, if you will, that has weekly newsletters for these geographies. It could be a district, but primarily it's local elected leaders right now.
Excellent. So, it's interesting. You brought up earlier, you talked about it. We're doing the same thing, flicking the same match every time. And we have a saying in the Chicago area, it's the Chicago way. And it's very common in government where we've always done it that way. So we're going to continue to waste taxpayers' dollars and time and effort. And we're going to have 30 people doing a job that maybe 2 could do, because you're wasting your time pushing paper around for 40 signatures to sign off on something that could have been handled probably through a workflow system that would have been able to manage it in a much better way. This is why hammers cost $429 in the U.S. government, because there's so much bureaucracy that goes with it, right?
Yeah. Bureaucracy, potentially reporting, how much administration needs to be done, like the amount of work in between an implementation of anything, to the number of people that you have to talk to and how often you have to talk to them to comply with things that you would never do in a normal setting. All sorts of weird compliance things that 98% of them are either antiquated or don't make sense anymore, or built on some workflow that's from 1970, or, some sort of COBOL system, like the DMV at the government is built on COBOL from like 1950. Yeah. They can't, it was something like, and I remember trying to do this, like make a change in the to an increase of 1 point for speeding in a certain area. Like after it went through budgeting appropriations, it came back and it was something that was like $500,000 to make that change. It was like, what? That's the cost to raise a number from 1 to 2 in your
Yeah.
system? You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
I get it. Here in Cook County, in the Metro Chicago area, with the large Cook County is one of the most sought after counties when it comes to everything from corruption to nepotism that you could imagine. But there's a company that came in and was supposed to do work on the way you appraise and tax people for property taxes. This company has spent, I thought it was overrun at $30 million. Overrun at $30 million. And it still has not delivered a product yet because they're trying to put, circles into square holes or squares into circle holes because they have to meet the technology that they've had from 30 years ago to try and get it out to the constituents now. So nobody could do they have a multiplier thing here for property tax. Nobody can figure out how they come up with a number for the property tax. You can't do the math on paper. It doesn't exist.
in software, we call the problem when it comes to old tech, we call technical debt, right? Where and it grows if you don't fix it. So if you don't update your system and you keep patching old things and didn't upgrade your database version or your, whatever you need to do to keep things today, like it's a constant maintenance. And every 6 months you have to upgrade all of your tech stack ultimately to make sure that it is modern and current and reflecting the needs of computers, right?
Yeah.
And people.
And the reality of it is government can't do that. They can't move that quick. There's no way they could budget that quickly or plan this in the current system. I don't think the government can move that quick. You may feel it differently. I would love it to be able to move quicker.
Well, a lot of it comes down to a general, reactivity. Instead of being proactive, they're reactive, right? And there's some general common sense to that, but not a lot of critical thinking. I think I guess maybe the way, right? Like there's some degree of like, look, why would we spend money on problems we don't have?
Right. Yeah. Of course, because it's simple.
Right. That's the simple answer. But the bigger answer is, yeah, but it's not hard everyone understands technical debt if you're in software and how hard that gets to continue things moving in a good direction in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years at the DMV or 70, however long they've been building on this old behemoth, that's just like doesn't make sense. So there's certain things they have to be proactive with or it will bite them in the butt. And one of those is cybersecurity.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Yeah.
This is a big
absolutely.
one. Like that's going to be massively destructive if every agency doesn't take that very seriously.
And I know that they've found things that have happened just recently with some of the electrical companies getting hit with cyber attacks where they had backdoors that they could get into, or not even secured computers, not even password secured. They had a port that was open, allowing people to get into them. So all right, so here, this goes to my next question. Public trust is declining nationwide. Do you believe better communication alone solves that problem, or does technology have a role in rebuilding that trust?
I think like any relationship between people, communication is critical. I don't think it's the only thing, in some relationships, it's, with your partner, there's other things, sexual attraction's important in your relationship with your partner, but communication is critical. And, when it comes to relationship with an elected or an agency and the public, it is more than that. I think it's your actions. Also, I can say, well, there's a relationship there in your personal life as well with your spouse or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So what you do is also important, not just what you say you're going to do or what you're reporting on. But if you were to, put it in the pie of communications for how agencies communicate, I'd say it's, 50, 60% potentially, if I was just throwing numbers out there. It's really, really critical. I think it's a keystone.
Okay. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. So continuing this, government communicators struggle with that tension between speed and accuracy. How should agencies balance both?
Well, there's an acquisition component of information, which is where technology really comes in, acquiring and filtering and getting the information, geographically bound information, right? That's relevant, and when it comes to accuracy, you're operating, even with AI, you're operating at the accuracy of the information available. So I think it's not always just there's this is what people are saying and this is fact. And I think this comes down to having the humility to know the difference of what is just information out there that people have the right to create and read, and also that, the objective truth and facts are often very different than what headlines represent. And I think that's important to understand and communicate. Like, look, this is the information I have available. This is the information that is available on, let's say, this biased news source and this biased news source. And I'm going to put them together, and you can make your decision. Here's what, in the matrix of possibilities of all of information and what we get to then do with that when we are elected officials, that's a matrix of possibilities. And it doesn't mean I believe one thing entirely or the other thing entirely. It means I have a binary choice to make when it comes to voting on a policy that I may or may not have been part of writing. So and there's a lot of confounding variables. There's a lot of edge cases that may not be considered. But as an elected, if they can communicate that they're people too, and they have to make complicated choices to reflect everybody's wishes the best they can. And this time, maybe they fell 51% on a policy that was pretty complex and controversial, but they still feel for the other 49% of people. They get it. That's the thing with policy that I think that's truly, truly missing, is that it's not just, you have to take a staunch belief on every possible thing. It's complicated. You have to make a choice, and you do the best you can. And you can still empathize with other people, even though you may disagree with it in a policy step.
And I think currently we are in a position where it does not matter whether you agree or not. It's my belief versus your belief, and damned either way. I know currently that's the way it looks for a lot of people, because they maybe don't like the person that's there, or they have feelings about that, and those feelings creep into it overrides their ability to think freely. So, and this goes to my next question. So, MyGovTools emphasizes authenticity. That word gets used a lot in communication. What does authentic communication actually look like in government?
Yeah, good question. Well, look, and now with AI being part of the equation, I think we have to reframe what, individual word choice, I don't think means authenticity. AI deciding that you rephrase this to be better doesn't mean authenticity. It can reflect it, but I think what authenticity means is that a person, that you as the elected or agency have gone through whatever was supported the creation of your messaging, and you are able to verify that it authentically reflects what you believe, or what your constituents believe, or what the agency believes, and that is just reflected. And there's a judgment, a human judgment there that has to be, that oversee this type of messaging and communication, so that you can put your sign, you stamp it off, essentially, right? A lot of elected officials don't write their newsletters anyway.
No, they don't.
Someone else writes
handed
it.
off to a staffer. Right, it's handed off to a staffer. So it
Right.
might as well be AI written anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you could say that for anything. So it's really just like, does this reflect what people feel and the way that I feel? And just because it was written better with an editor, or it was summed up nicely for me by AI, who cares about that? So, that's just, doing a job that a person does. So I think that's what authentic means. You stay true to your beliefs. Make sure that it's reflecting what you really care about, and tone can help with that too. A little adjustments in tone.
I agree. Evan, a lot of elected officials communicate frequently, but not always effectively. And what mistakes you see most often?
I think the biggest one is that, and that I've seen firsthand, is that they're all talk around campaign season. Everyone loves to communicate and and then when the job needs to be done, they're not out there in the field reflecting the people they promised.
Yeah,
crickets. They don't care. They can't get fired easily. You know how hard it is to get fired as an elected? Like, you have to get basically overthrown do something exceptionally negligent, where you're either arrested, or your colleagues, other senators or assembly people or whatever, throw you out, decide that or you get voted out. So those people can't throw you out. They have to ask you and force, basically convince you to leave, all your colleagues, or you have to get voted out, or you have to get arrested. I guess those are the three paths of where, and if you disrespect, if what you do becomes big enough of an issue where you're now reflecting, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in a way that they don't want, then they'll politically pressure you to get you out of there.
Yeah, we saw that in the recent elections. So yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so
recent
that's
primaries,
the game
we
they
just
play.
saw that. Yeah, no, and this is, I think this is a difficult thing for a lot of people to understand, is that the people that we elect and we put into office, we don't. By the way, I love that cup. People that we elect, yeah, it's awesome. People that we elect and put into office, if they don't do the things that we elected them and put them in for, they should be out of there because that's why they were elected by the populace or by the majority of the vote. And unfortunately, some communities they just keep rewashing the same kind of person over and over again because it's the party, whatever party it might be, and
It's hard to beat
that's
the
a tough
party.
thing. Yeah, I don't, I didn't want to get into the whole political end of it.
Okay.
That's a whole different thing. So, all right. So here, if you had to advise a local PIO on one thing that they should measure to understand community trust, what would it be?
Don't take sides and be consistent and regular. At GovTools, we say weekly communication. Send something weekly. Don't make it concise. Make it just let them know that you're there, that you're thinking about them, and that you have their backs, and that you're not there necessarily to take one side or the other, even though when it comes to policy, you have to make a choice. But that you are seeking to understand and listen to the needs of people. And I think that's what it comes down from, being a public agency or an elected official, and that it's regular and that people know you're listening, right? Like they want to feel that they can talk to you. And if you start, unfortunately, taking sides is what gets you attention. But I think we have to get out of the attention game and into the let me understand what you need, whether or not I agree with you or not game. And unfortunately, that's not sexy.
No, it's not. And that it is it's yelling at people about what you think you're right or wrong, and that's the unfortunate thing. And I've
Click, click,
noticed
click,
this.
click, click, click,
Oh
click.
my God, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that whole nonsense. Public information officers, the name, the title, sharing information to the community. But I've started to see a lot of the name changing now to community outreach or community awareness. And I kind of like that because that means that they're now engaging with the community more than just sharing crime stats or sharing update about something that occurred in the community. I think that it's important because what we see a lot is PIOs, a lot of times they are one person bands, depending on the size of the organization. They're drowning in information and they don't have the capacity to do that outreach. But if you play it right and you have that outreach, you're going to get that information back to the community. When they shut that information off, they don't talk to the community. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to social and talk about it. They're going to go to, in those
Yeah.
little the Facebook groups or whatever it is, what's happening in your town, anywhere who, I mean, it's those are the ones where people complain about. And if we don't listen to them, if we don't engage them and maybe even respond to them, we lose out on a lot of things.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's probably a better name for it too. It's not just a George Carlin euphemism.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw the bit about shell shock
I know which one you're talking about. Yep.
to post-traumatic stress disorder, or homeless, what is what's the one they use now? Not something
Residential, not residentially challenged, unhoused.
unhoused, I guess,
Yeah.
instead of, yeah. And so I think that's probably a good play. And the more people feel, I think the part of rebuilding trust is really about people knowing you care about them, whether you or not you vote in their favor or not. That's the trick. It's not that I care. And what I saw a lot of is that people in communities, in districts, that if they don't vote your way, they don't get attention, right? Because
Sure.
let's just say,
Yeah.
they're just not going to get the type of love and because you know that they're not going to keep you in power and you're not going to get their money. They're not going to support you in the initiatives, the ballot initiatives you put forth. So I think that it's important that elected leaders and agencies can see through the divided lines and support everybody as people, not just the ones who agree with their ideologies or their political stances. That's the real check, because everyone has their own political beliefs a little bit, but you got to be able to meet everybody where they're at in government. And that's hard to put the emotional aspect behind that as any individual, but I think that's what's needed. I feel this way, but I respect you for feeling the way you feel. I'm still going to vote the other way. Will you respect me as someone who will listen to you and still take your information and bring it into the public realm and bring it into the council's chambers and say, I've spoken to these people. I understand their needs genuinely.
Yeah, then that's a rare breed of politician too, because you don't, or I should say, not even politician, of a government employee. You don't find that often where they will say that I've spoken to them and share that information because it might be politically detrimental to their career. Because a lot of municipalities, it's the mayor that runs everything, or the city council, or in your case, a director who's ever above you, and that can do damage to you. It would be nice if you could just generally trust that if you shared that information, that it's not going to be negative. And unfortunately, it in most cases it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's a sad reality of where we're
Yeah.
at also. Yeah.
So can we talk about MyGovTools? Does it include, if I'm understanding this right, it includes news feeds, event tracking, and crime information? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. There's two components to it. There was the original sort of district tool set, which is ongoing for district folks who want to use it. But the product that we've evolved to, that has become our business model essentially, is to have a monthly subscription to this weekly newsletter. And it's essentially, replaces, whatever sending out your newsletter now, but we do the newsletter for you also. So
Okay.
it lands in your inbox. We have a complex, AI scraping and person combination, a three-tier newsletter structure that helps deliver a great newsletter every time. And we still say we don't want to be 100% automated. We want you to come in there and spend 10 or 20 minutes every week to make sure that and add things we miss. It's not perfect, but it gets
Right.
you a lot of the way. It'll
So
save you, 4 or 6 hours a week or whatever.
And I'll tell you, that's a lifesaver and thing. So you still have a human in between. So if you said you had the human in between the AI developing helping develop the newsletter.
Yeah, there's a human still that, makes sure that the information's in there, language, tone, links are working, and a variety of other things that AI still breaks. And just, I don't even see that getting perfect yet. Like, I don't know if there's a way to make it 100%. I think
No,
for
I don't think you can.
no, we think there's a need for a person to give a little bit of a human touch where it can't be. And then even after that, to spend, the elected to spend just a review time, make sure it's doing the right things for them and reflecting
Yeah,
what
no,
they
I
feel.
agree with that. I think you have to have a human in between. There's got to be some level of governance there,
Yeah.
at least, to look at it.
Well, I'll give you another example. I'll just give you one more
Sure.
example. We let them every week submit information that they want to make sure is included. So we have an
Okay.
ongoing submission process. We review their social feeds and whatever. So like it's not like it's just AI coming up with stuff. It's
Right. I
partial.
like that.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So could platforms like yours help identify emerging issues before they become crises?
I think the possibility of that is there. One of the things I saw with the fires, the Palisade fires here, and a variety, even when I was, again, at the Senate and I was watching how different electeds were responding and the timeliness of which they were responding, and then how they got their information to then craft a response to the emergency and who they deliver that to, how and when and how it gets delivered. And even that has like this political element to it. Right? Like it's weird, but like, they drop and whether or not and I'll just say, because Trump is the president now, it could have been Biden at the time or whatever. But recently, even in times of emergency, to be dropping, and I'm not going to defend that Trump doesn't do this in his own way also, right? I'm not going to, but like, people need to take responsibility for their own actions. And like, when you're communicating emergency stuff to people, just focus on the emergency stuff. Don't make this about I hate Trump stuff and this is why, blame Trump for the stuff in the Palisades and or just give people what they need to be safe and stop making it political when it comes to that stuff. That stuff really bothered me. That's the first thing that's got to go. It's got to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree on that, 100% on that. And again, the politics always come into play. You're right. So how do you see, in public safety communications, context matters a lot. How do you prevent dashboards or data from oversimplifying complex community issues?
Well, information gathering is, I think there's a difference between information gathering and filtering. There is to saying this is the whole picture. Right. We were talking about it earlier, like numbers in politics are, every agency has their way of reporting and why they report it that way and how that number is determined in almost every level of even at the police departments, like we were talking about,
All right, so let's talk about this
you want
because
to
we
do it?
talked about
All
it
right.
before we did the interview. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's talk about changing URLs or changing UCR codes and things all along. You've seen it in your own experience, and I know I've seen it. So what's the deal?
Well, you've been a PIO at a multitude of police organizations. So, you tell me where you feel I'm off here. But from what I can tell, especially when I was initially aggregating crime data around the state, it looked like at each level there was a difficulty of access, right? Or transparency. Now, at the local levels, there's lots of reasons why they potentially could change a code from one thing to another. It could be something to do with grants or insurance or proving to the city manager and the city council that crime is down, because that's the goal. You want to show that you're doing better on your goal, right? Here,
Right.
you gave it. Here we are. I'm the new guy. I'm coming in. I got to show better numbers. You're motivated to do that. Now, I'm not saying every one of them is a lie, and there's definitely legitimate reasons for protecting people of why things could be changed. But there's some of that happening at some organizations some of the time. Then you go up a level and you're like, okay, the state require the California Justice, forgetting the exact name of the agency, but even at the FBI level, at the federal level, Department of Justice, sorry, is trying to aggregate data. They aggregate it at the state level, and then this FBI aggregates it from the federal level across the states. So they have crime data. What is required to get in there? I don't. Last time I saw, there was difficulty of like incident level tracking to some degree. I saw that, if some agencies are reporting it with a very clean API that you can access and view that data, and others, it takes them like 6 months because maybe they don't have the technology or they don't have the enforcement necessary. The DOJ doesn't require to do it whatever it is, there's just massive gaps in data. It's
and
massive.
And I know recently the FBI, they changed, the Department of Justice changed the way that they were gathering the data. They were moving away from the FBI statistics to the UCRs, and they were going to I forget the name of it now, but they're moving to something else. So there's this gap of 4 or 5 years where their data is completely skewed. And this is where all these communities are claiming that their crime is down because they're using numbers that don't match up.
Right.
And, I remember years ago, a chief told me, don't take credit for crime being down. I want to be very careful on that, because when it goes up and then it's ultimately somewhere along the line, it's going to spike somewhere. They're going to say, now, what did you do? What did you change? Why did it go up? And it's your fault.
Yeah. It works the other way too.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Palisades fire. I got to ask you this question. Well, your thoughts about the report that came out that we found out was edited and modified for the fire department's response to the fire. What's your thoughts?
I'm not surprised, because it seems like every time there's a big issue, there's a report, and that report gets edited, and then that report was miscalculated, and then someone was conspiring to do something with that report. But there's real people over here doing some other party that's also part of it, and they didn't actually do the real report. And then when that real report comes out, that's the new news because they had the original info. It's like this every one of these issues, all the way from the Mueller report to it's like every one of them is this reality show of constant. And now we're at the Epstein file. Epstein files at the federal level. It's like the same stuff. Okay, how many you have to go through and the number of pages and the redactions and what they originally had and why they're not doing more and why didn't you talk? And no one's read. And the funny thing is, no one reads through the reports. So similar to bills, right? Similar. I mean, bills are notorious for this, but like no one reads these things. So everyone just has feelings about what someone else who didn't read it, like your favorite, pundit.
Mm-hmm.
You just have feelings of what the pundit says about it. You're not even making real information. So even then the data is just data. You don't know how statistically.
There's a line that Nancy Pelosi said many years ago when they were in the process of passing Obamacare, and the line was, "Well, we haven't read the whole bill. We'll read it after we pass it." And I'm confused.
There you go. There you go. And the amount of stuff that gets put.
Yeah, make it law, but don't Don't read it.
No, this is but this is it starts at the top, right? In terms of what we want people to do and how we, and there is no one even down to the election. We have to vote by the 2nd, right? And the June 2nd is coming up, and people want, who are you voting for? What are you going to vote for? Who are you going to? And no one wants to do the real research to understand the issues and try to make an informed decision, as difficult as it is on any of this stuff. So when these reports come out, you're going to find out in 1 month that there's something else that was not considered that comes and changes the way this story unfolds around the Palisades. And it's complicated. I think there's bad actors. I think there's good actors. I don't know exactly how bad and how good all of them are, but I'll tell you this, in 1 month from now, that reality TV show is going to have a new climax is going to happen, and people
Right.
are going, oh, did you hear about the thing? And blah, blah, blah. No one knows anything about the
Yeah.
real, who was in the room when it happened to make those decisions. No one will ever know that information. That is forever
No.
hidden. That's how I
Yeah.
feel
And
about that and all the other things.
I agree, because I look at like the Epstein files, and they're attacking the Republicans for not releasing all the Epstein files. But when the Democrats were in charge, they had all the Epstein files. They could have released them, but nobody wanted to release them. So it's now they just point fingers at each other, and
They just point fingers.
nothing ever
Exactly.
gets done, and they move on to the next crisis. Right?
You
All
know,
right.
the
So
easiest, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I
Go
was going
ahead.
to say
Say
the easiest way to frame it, I always bring this back to your personal relationship. Like that you like, think about the problems in your personal relationships that you've ever had for anyone, right? Like whatever, whether it's your wife or your friend or your parent, whatever that is. And now think about that amplified for millions of people. Because that's the human nature of problems that happen at individual relationships. At a larger scale, those things are just amplified orders of magnitude by just like, but it's the same human nature underlying things that happen. So you kind of like, I challenge people to think of like, what is it think about the mistakes you've made in your life personally, or that you think other people have made in your personal relationships, and now multiply that by 350 million.
yeah. True. Absolutely.
It's something like that is the problem.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. All right. So we're moving into this era where AI can summarize communities. It can draft messages. It can monitor sentiment. What worries you most about all of that with AI?
I don't know. I don't have the same worries about AI. I think that other people that a lot of the fear going around. I think there is some legitimate fear for the future around if we don't control things, but you can't run around every day just being scared of something that is inevitable, which is human progress, especially when it comes to being, economically worthwhile and saves people time and money, and it gives them a 24-hour resource. So, I think I just don't have I think it's so crucial to our future that what you have to do is really just think about how it's going to be useful for you and how you can contribute to making sure that you're staying in control of the AI, if that's the sphere, and that it's not controlling you, and that you're the one using the judgment to determine whether this is good, whether it has all the context, whether it has, and right now it's a tool and a resource to make things better and easier and more transparent, and so use it for what it's good for, I think, and make sure that you feel comfortable. And when it comes to like being a ghost writer, I mean, like I said, elected officials have people write their newsletters all the time. So what's the difference if a computer does it better?
Right.
I
And there are people that are worried. They're concerned about jobs. They're concerned about losing their job because AI is going to take over. And the reality for the vast majority of us, it's not going to be affected. It's not, you're not talking about programmers maybe in some sense, because AI can write code pretty easily, much quicker sometimes, but there's still going to be inaccuracies in that code. There's still going to be somebody that's going to have to walk through it, test it, and then just the average person. There's no AI that's going to go pump gas in a car yet. That's not going to do the mechanical work on a car at this point and
yeah,
fix it. And I
I
think
believe.
we need to go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's just always, look, could there be a massive job crisis? Maybe. The data for every revolution we've ever had has not proven that to be true yet. So there's no historical data that validates that this is going to happen, and new jobs won't be created. As far as I can tell, AI powers people to have tools to do things they couldn't do before. You can create things so much faster. You can create beautiful universes. One person now doesn't need a team of people to do what would have taken a year, they can now do in a week by themselves. And I think that there's a lot of creativity there, even in that weird
Right.
sense, right? It's AI creativity mixed with human, prompting or whatever. But there's tons of room to be part of the oversight of AI in the next generation of jobs before we get to the point where, like, okay, we're all just sucking out of a tube and AI's, just gonna what, like, eat us? I don't think you can stay ethical and try to, stay in control. And
Right.
particularly if you're going to do anything to really do that, I think the number one thing that has to happen is the policy has to reflect some of those things. And the way that policy is made right now, which is locally, it can be done weekly, but at the state and federal levels, yearly. At the state level, for example, policy is made like yearly. And like, I just don't think that people are agile enough for the needs of AI. Like that, it will take
No, they're
over government faster than it could keep up.
yeah.
So
Yeah, unfortunately that's the one thing that's going to be the limit is how the government puts guardrails into place and so on. How do you in regards to MyGovTools, how do you respond to people who hear constituent intelligence platform and immediately think surveillance or privacy concerns?
yeah, I suppose. Well, it's not a big brother thing. If you look at it like any aggregator tool, we're not doing anything that takes private information. Everything that we use is publicly available or synthesized in that way or collected from people personally that they've given to us to share. So, I don't think we step on that at all. Whatever's available is available. We're not going farther than that to acquire information from people. We don't buy information.
Yeah,
Like,
it's public record. It's public information.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't see us.
All
I
right,
don't
so
see us on that.
yeah, so your platform it aggregates that large information. Where does the responsibility for accuracy begin and end?
Well, I guess because everything's public, it's at the nature of what we can gather and what people provide us. So I'd say the answer is pretty similar to the last one, where it's just like things are public, things are available. People still have to use judgment to determine what is true and not true, and even just saying true and not true. And it's back to that point. Like, accuracy gets down to this question that I ask people who come on my podcast very often, which is like, what is a fact? And I get different answers from everybody, from left, right sides of Congress, senators, whatever, all sorts of answers. And it's like, what will make you happy is a fact? And is there anything that moves that needle? So when you say accuracy, it's like a fact. You mean accuracy means facts? Okay, well, what are facts? Facts are things that can be objectively determined, right? That don't have human emotion put into it. They're not subjective answers, things that have been empirically, not firsthand, seen by you even. Or should you believe none of what you hear and half of what you see? Because even you have your own cognitive biases and filters. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm on this sort of like epistemological journey because I think people see the world entirely incorrectly forever and will continue to. And they have to have intellectual humility. We can know some things happened and some things existed, and we can call those facts. But how we interpret them, people, I think, have to just be so much looser with what we think is 100% pure, unadulterated information that gets into your ears. Like, you have to be able to think critically around what you hear and what you see. You don't have to deny that there's a war going on in the Middle East, right? But how that war exactly happened and when it started and who bombed who when and what gets reported and which PR agencies reporting the data and where they get their data and who's in the room even having those conversations versus what you hear, who knows?
Right, right.
So that's accuracy. That word needs to be entirely can't come at with a level of intellectual humility, I think, when it comes to this kind of information, complex
Okay.
information like this.
Evan, what's the most overrated metric?
What's an overrated metric?
Yeah. What would you
In
consider the most overrated metric?
in what
Better
in
yet.
what context?
In data, gathering data from the community.
I don't know if I could put a most overrated, but I think
Okay.
I think for now, for just because we've been talking about it, I think one big one is crime went up or down. That's a good one. I think that's an
Yeah.
overrated metric.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree because the question is really the question should be is how safe do you feel in your community?
Yeah.
That's the metric I think, because some people are not going to ever be affected by this certain crimes that
Yeah.
they're reporting.
Yeah, I
right, so
listened to one on Tom Homan, just really quickly, give another one. Tom Homan and I watched the Tom Homan on Chris Cuomo, right?
Okay.
This is interesting. And they were talking and Chris is like, hey, It's 18% increase of 18% deaths in the ICE facilities, in the detention centers, federal, these federal detention centers. And
Right.
he's like, yeah, but you're missing the whole. You just gave me a raw number, right? So, okay, well, now, okay, Chris has a point, and he could probably justify his point, but Tom's now justifying his point, which is like those numbers. It's doubled in population size, and also those numbers, the 18% was based on like things that didn't come up in the medical examination, like out of nowhere heart attacks or like, whatever. He's got a number of reasons of why that 18% is
Right.
misrepresented, right? True or not, I don't know. But like there you go. 18, whether death rate in detention facilities, ICE detention facilities. Now it's arguable. You can't even rely on a number that was reported even by the ICE folks themselves. So
Right.
what does that mean?
Right.
I don't know. Again,
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah, you're
critically
right.
around this kind of stuff.
Yeah. What's one government process you would automate tomorrow?
My God. Look, I think most of the DMV can be entirely automated. First of all, I think they should be in hot pink. I think every DMV should be painted hot pink. I think it'd be a much better place to work. People would love it there. Wouldn't feel like, I don't know if you ever saw Zootopia. This is like a classic
Yeah.
scene from the show. This, whether you even seen it, that scene went around of how well it reflects like people's sentiment on the DMV, I think. And I just think there is still so many things that, like, the amount of paper that, for example, is just like sent out to everyone in like 38,000 languages, for example. And you're like, okay, I understand you need to send things out in different languages. But, maybe knowing the language of the home you're sending it to would help maybe distribute that, for example. Better mailers, things that just go out in the mail from the government that you just see is just like, most of this is just empty space paper, right? And they just, because they have to, a lot of it's legal, they need to share that.
Right.
But the amount of paper that I see, and I know there's reasons for multiple language stuff, and I think that's great in a lot of ways. I just think that, like, I don't know if every household across entire California needs to be communicated Chinese, Tagalog, Portuguese, every single 50 languages. It's like, and then it's only like one snippet of the thing in that language too. I just think there's so much inefficiency of how they're doing that. Either be thorough or don't do it, and don't send, let me find the thing in a different language at a link with a QR code or something. I just think there's a lot of paper nonsense still that is just like people moving piles.
It's the way we
Just-
always did it, right?
just-
Isn't that what they always say? It's just the way we've always done it. So we continue to do the wrong thing. We
That's
don't
it.
do the right thing.
Yeah.
All right. So
Get
if you
off
could
paper.
give yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you could give a local communicator one thing that they could change, what would it be?
A local communicator, one thing that they can change, I would
To
tell
improve
them,
public trust. To
yeah,
improve public trust. I should have added
communicate
that in there. I'm sorry.
often, be concise, and communicate often and concisely, and be impartial when it comes to reflecting the needs of communities that are, almost all of them that you're reflecting are likely divided. Now, it's a little different if you live in an entirely, red or blue district in a small community, but generally speaking, especially as you get into larger, pieces of land, yeah, I'd say reliability, regular communication is so key, and stop using big words people don't understand.
Yep. Is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you answer it?
Is there a
I know
question
we've
you
been
would
all
have?
over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you should have asked me, and how would I have
Yeah.
answered that question?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think that's so hard. I mean, I could just come up with a question for myself. Like, I'm, for example, thinking about a lot around the when it comes to information. I want to, I guess, say that the epistemology, and how people think about that, basically how they're acquiring knowledge, and how that affects their beliefs, how they treat people, and what they do at the voting booth. And I guess the question would have been that. How does it affect? How does people's, intake of information affect those things? And I think it drastically, people have to be very aware of their own cognitive biases. They should read Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and then they can see how biased their own judgment is, whether they like it or not. And I think that is critical for creating a better society where we can all chat about things without thinking that just because you feel one way, I think you're automatically a bad dad or a bad, community member or a bad friend. just because you like one president or the other. So yeah, I guess that's my longer answer to that question.
Okay. All right. So let's switch this up. Lighten up. We're almost done here. Rapid fire questions. Ready?
Ready. Okay.
Phone call, voice memo, or FaceTime? What's your go-to for staying connected?
I have an Android, but WhatsApp video call as much as possible for me is the best. I think that
Awesome.
face-to-face is big.
Streaming binge or weekend read? What's an ideal escape?
Nothing on the calendar.
Morning rituals, sunrise workout, quiet coffee, or news scroll?
All of them, but not social media news scroll.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could adopt any animal, real or mythical, what would it be?
Owl.
What's one song that always gets you moving no matter the mood?
Jet Airliner originally by Paul Pina, but popularized by Steve Miller Band. A lot of people
Did not know that. Teleportation and time travel, which power would you like?
I think both. I think they're both fabulous. Who would? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have to
Play
choose?
it safe or roll the dice?
Play it safe. Fiscal conservative I would lean on. When it comes to money, I'd say play it safe with a pocket for rolling the dice, but keep your,
Okay.
yeah.
Which historical figure would you want to shadow for a day, not just meet?
Say it again.
Which historical figure would you want to shadow for a day, not just meet?
Socrates.
Excellent. Final thoughts. What key points would you like listeners to take from today's interview?
Learn the word epistemology if you don't know it, because that's a bit, some people may not know what that means, and have intellectual humility when it comes to complex issues that you're not in, especially ones you're not involved in at all, and you're only reading things on social media or headlines. Just assume there's another viewpoint that you don't have, that a lot of people feel, and they're people too. And as long as it, doesn't require hurting people are, can generally have all sorts of opinions that they want outside of hurting other people. They can think and believe and do it, and you're not going to change that. So work with it and work to seek to understand, not to be understood, as Stephen Covey.
Evan, as we wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto you live by?
Leave places better than you found them.
I like that. How can people best reach out or connect if they want to follow up from today's interview?
Sure. Well, you can definitely connect with me on the social channels, my LinkedIn, Evan Meyer. That's, professionally, feel free to connect. evanmeyer.io is my website. You can learn a little bit more about me there. My podcasts are on there, the businesses and things I've worked on and projects and stuff like that.
The show notes. Yeah.
And the show
notes.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I think that's the easiest way. Enjoy what you find.
Yeah. Evan, thank you very much for being on the show.
It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks again for having me. Great being here.